10,000 subscribers. I genuinely never thought that this channel would get anywhere near that. When I started CRG now 5 years ago, I did so just as a means to share my passion for these old retro computers. The videos are not scripted, they're not even that well edited, but I always try to remain honest in them. What you see is what you get, and I know I personally have learned quite a bit along the way. Hopefully those of you that are regulars here on the channel, well, hopefully you lot have learned something too. But we've also managed to grow a little bit of a community around CRG. There is the Discord, links in the description, and everyone is more than welcome. But as part of that community, the one thing that never ceases to amaze me is the generosity of people out there. And so today, I thought to celebrate rolling over the 10,000 subscriber mark, we'd take a look at some donations. This one is really heavy. So we'll leave that to last, but there are lots of little things here. So let's swing round to the bench behind me and take a look at what some very generous people have sent me. And I want to start with a couple of donations that have come from some of my fellow YouTube channels. And we're starting with one who I would have to say is one of my main inspirations for everything that you see here on this channel. These couple of PCBs, these were sent in by Chris, aka Gadget UK 164. Anyone who's been watching this channel for any length of time will be familiar with that name, because Gadget has helped me with more projects than I can probably count. If you enjoy the type of videos that I put out, you really must be subscribed to Chris's channel. But he has sent me a couple of PCBs here. In fact, there was a couple more on top of this, a couple of SID cards. One for the Amiga, another one for the BBC Micro, although that card I have actually since moved on to someone else. I don't have a BBC Micro, so I didn't really see the point in me keeping hold of that. I just passed it on to someone else who can hopefully make use of it. But of the two cards we do have to show you here today, a Neo Geo DIP ROM adapter, version 1.1, and designed by Gadget UK himself. Space for a ROM here, space for a PLCC type socket here, which I would have to assume clips over the top of an existing chip on your Neo Geo, allowing you to add a DIP ROM. No surprises there, I suppose. It is called DIP ROM adapter after all. But that was not the main donation, rather it is this. And so this is an EMS/ROM board for 8-bit ISA computers. Chris did build one of these himself over on his channel, and I will link that video down in the description. Along with this, he has included sockets, a couple of the ICs, and some of the little passives. Pin header there as well. What's the pin header for? Oh, for these points here, I assume. I do need to go and source the RAM chips themselves, but I do have an old AT style system with just 8-bit ISA slots in it. That old thing probably could use a bit more RAM. A ROM socket would certainly be handy as well. So at some point in the near future, we will be assembling this card for that machine. As I say though, I just need to go get some parts. The next two packages then, these both come from Andy over at HBR, or Hack Build Restore. Andy has a pretty new YouTube channel. He does mostly cover Amiga stuff. What we have in here is Amiga stuff. I will again link his channel down in the video's description. Please make sure you go and subscribe to Andy. As I say, he's only getting started, but his videos are very entertaining and very informative, so they are very much worth checking out. We'll start with this long one here. This was the first thing that he sent me. And this is a fantastic donation. Absolutely incredible. You can maybe already tell what it is, but for those who aren't too sure, this is a Zorro card, a Zorro 2 card. This is a SCSI controller, and in particular, a Commodore A2090A. Now, my original intention for this was to put it into my Amiga 2000, but unfortunately, given the age of this thing, it doesn't really play nice with the Pi Storm that I have in there. In fact, it may be the Zorro 3 RAM that's on the Pi Storm. Well, it's being emulated on the Pi Storm. It may be that, which this thing doesn't play nice with. As when I put this into the 2000, well, it just sits there with a black screen and does nothing. Andy, though, assures me that this does work fine. And so I do have another idea for it. Something that might be a little bit silly. It will involve this card. This isn't a donation, I just bought this. And that will be a project for the future. I do hope to use this with an Amiga. It just won't be a big box Amiga. But then the other things that he sent me, well, we have a disc here, and that may give away what else hides in here. We have some PCBs and some components, parts that are designed by Andy, and these will allow us to use a parallel port zip drive with the Amiga. As I understand, as Andy was telling me, you can't just use parallel port zip drives on the Amiga natively. The only ones that would be natively supported, I suppose, would be SCSI versions of the zip drive. But he has come up with this little board here that does allow us to use the parallel port drive on the Amiga. I just so happen to have a spare 100 megabyte zip drive, and so we will be assembling this and putting it to the test at some point. Although if you do want to see someone putting it together and testing it now, well, Andy has a video for that over on his channel. And again, I will link that one down in the video's description, so make sure you go and check it out. And speaking of zip drives, well, that leads on to the next one. And that is a zip drive itself. An internal drive, obviously. This is an IDE drive, and this comes from Johnny Blanchard. Johnny runs the YouTube channel Re-Enthused. I think he's been going a similar sort of time to myself. Again, I'll link the channel down in the description, so make sure you go and check it out. He does mostly seem to cover more rare Japanese machines, which I personally always find very interesting. But I had put out a post earlier, well, last year, looking for an IDE zip drive, and Johnny offered this one up. So my intentions with this is to stick it into my main Windows 10 machine, although I will have to get a different case, because the case that I do have at the minute, it only has the one external 3.5-inch drive bay, and in there I currently have an LS120 disk drive. But I would like to add this to it as well. The IDE zip drives are still supported under Windows 10, and in fact maybe also under Windows 11. So something I definitely want to do in the near future. But why would I bother with that? Well, there is a very good reason, and that is because of what's in here. This box comes from Sean from all the way over in the United States. And in here we have a letter, but also another zip drive. Here's the letter, and yes, my apologies, Sean. I have been sitting on this for quite a while. So Sean writes, Glenn, hope all is well with you and yours. I have truly enjoyed watching your YouTube videos and wanted to donate something to you and your channel as thanks. As discussed, here is the iOmega Z100 Plus Zip 100 Plus external zip drive with power supply and cable. I hope it works. I was unable to test it. If not, maybe it will make a good repair video. Again, thank you for all the great videos and keep up the great work. Be well and stay retro. PS, sorry for the cheesy retro letter-headed template. Sean, there is nothing wrong with cheesy retro letter-headed template. So thank you so much for taking the time to write the letter. But more so, thank you for what's in here. And there it is. One SCSI zip drive. What's the difference between a normal Zip 100 and a Zip 100 Plus? I honestly have no idea, but I do hope this works. And the whole reason that I actually want the zip drives is because up until now, I've no real means of transferring new software onto my Apple Mac computers. So I've no real means of really using those machines, but I do want to try and get a bit more use out of them. The Apples do natively support the zip drives, and yes, 100 megabytes is but a drop in the ocean when thinking about modern storage capacities, but for those old retro machines, it's loads. And so I'm hoping this will be a way that I can get software onto those old Apples and finally get some use out of them. There is the SCSI cable for it. There is the power supply, although I suppose that's not really much use to me, especially with that on it. But I do have a couple of spare iOmega PSUs. There's one there. The output of this is 5 volt 800 milliamp. The output of this one is 5 volt 1 amp. So slightly less output, but you know, it is a zip drive power supply with a UK plug on it. So how about we just quickly test this? Now, I can't do too much with it at the minute, but let's just see if it even powers on. Yeah, okay. Power light came on. Drive read light came on for a second there. I think that's just the drive initializing. But will it take a disk? Yeah, it does seem to have taken that. And it does sound like the disk has spun up okay. I know these sometimes suffer from like a knocking problem, but I don't hear anything wrong with this one. So I hope this all does work fine. So thank you very much, Sean. Fantastic donation and will very much be useful to me. The next donation then is also from Sean, although a different one. This is actually the most recent donation to the channel. When I was down in Amiga, Ireland a couple of weeks ago, I got chatting to a couple of guys who are actually fairly local to where I am. And later that day, Sean came back with this, an in-circuit capacitor tester, an ESR meter, and he very kindly said, there's a donation for your channel. I'm not sure, but this thing definitely looks brand new. So thank you very much. I'm sure this will come in handy. But is there a capacitor anywhere that we could quickly test? This is one of the motherboards that I normally have screwed to the wall above my desk. All the boards on that wall are dead. This one is certainly no exception. It was a really good machine though. This board came out of an old Fujitsu computer, sort of a business orientated computer. But it had the AGP slot, 3 PCI slots, a socket 370 CPU, which in this instance is a 1 GHz Pentium 3. This did just randomly die on me one day though. And something that I've actually only noticed recently is that some of these caps have bulged. So maybe that's the reason that this board died. I have pillaged a few parts off it here over the years, but it certainly wouldn't be hard to add those ports back on again. Let's try and test some of those capacitors using this. So there's 3 sets of caps there, and those 2 positions belong to one of the caps, and that's one of the ones that has a noticeable sign of having bulged. So let's try and hook this up. Okay, it's given us an ASR of 0.173 ohms. It is saying good if capacitance less than 470 microfarad, but those are 830s, so is that this telling us that that capacitor is bad? Well, we know it's bulged, so presumably it is bad. They are 16 volt capacitors, and we refer to the little chart here. Well, there's no 830 microfarad, but there is 1000, and that is saying for a standard worst case, we should have an ASR of 0.09. So a little bit more because our capacitor has a lower capacitance rating. But yeah, according to all of this, that would be confirming that that cap is indeed bad. I wonder if it would be worth just recapping this whole board just to see if it would come back. I'll need to have a think about that, but in the meantime, you can let me know if it's something you'd be interested in seeing at some point in the future. But this wasn't the only thing that was given to me down at Amiga Ireland, because Stephen Leary was there, Mr. Terrible Fire himself, and he very kindly gave me a PCB for the TF360. The underside of this is largely completed. There's just a few components there that need to be fitted. Resistor networks, I would assume. And obviously the whole top side needs to be done. So I'll need to go shopping for some components. We need a couple of CPLDs, some RAM. Those are the buffers. Obviously the socket for the 060 itself. And yeah, a few other bits and pieces as well. But something I have wanted for a long time. Thank you very much, Stephen. It is very gratefully received. And yeah, once I get a few pound together, I'll go shopping, get all the components, and I can finally have an 060 in my CD32. How cool would that be? The next thing then comes from Richard. Back in October last year, I helped him out with his Amiga 500 and his A590 sidecar. He sent me the boards for both of those because he couldn't get them working together. It turned out just to be the edge connector on the 500 itself. That just needed reworked as it was quite heavily corroded. But we sorted that. That got those two working together. Then Richard very kindly offered up the original XT drive out of his A590. He switched that over to use a blue SCSI. But he sent me the original drive to see if I could image it. He said I can hold on to the drive as well. And he also sent me in here a little SD card adapter, or should I say an SD card extension cable. One of those things. And that will be useful for me for when I get that SCSI 02 card installed in one of my other Amigas. I can use this as a means to access an SD card on the blue SCSI that I intend to attach to that A2090A. This drive itself though, well, it's an old Epson HMD 755. Nothing on the defect lists. I'm not really sure what size this drive is. Let me Google that quickly. And yeah, according to stassen.org, this is a 21 megabyte hard drive. How about we attach some power and see if it spins up. So I do have this little handy power supply with a single Molex lead on it. Perfect for testing things like this. Does it do anything? No. Power's on. Although one thing I'm not sure about is if these old drives need a command to get them to start spinning. Oh well, something we can have a closer look at some point in the future. One question though, if I do manage to get this drive working, how could I go about imaging it? It obviously has an Amiga partition on it, but I don't have any other Amiga devices with an XT bus connection on them to connect this to. So any suggestions would be greatly appreciated. So just 3 more smaller items and then we're into the big boxes. In this bag here, we have a note. Hi Glenn, I hope that you can make use of the test kit boards. Kind regards, Steve. Steve is a member over on my Discord and he has sent me the boards that I need to make the test harness for Amiga test kit. Just these little bits and pieces. I will need to get the ports for it. You know, these will test the serial and the parallel port. That one for the parallel port, this one for the serial port. A few other little components required there as well. So I'll see if I can dig out the instructions for how to build these. I think those instructions are part of Amiga test kit itself. And then sure, we'll do a mini build, putting that together and testing it. Not that the serial port or the parallel port are used all that often, but certainly when I'm working on any Amiga boards, it would be nice just to do a more complete test and be able to test those ports as well. So thank you very much for that, Steve. This parcel then, this comes from Tyrell, all the way from Serbia. He got in touch with me after the charity stream event that I took part in. Charity stream that Lee from More Fun Making It did. And Tyrell has sent me a memory expansion for the ZX Spectrum. This adds 128K of SRAM, allowing our little rubber keyed computer, this thing, allowing this to play Spectrum 128 games. And well, other software as well. So that should go in there. Yep. The only thing that is missing really, I suppose, is a pass-through, because if I want to connect a joystick, the likes of this, you know, that plugs in there and then joystick goes in there, but that appears to be either or. Can you get a pass-through or a breakout board for this that would allow you to connect multiple accessories? If anyone knows, maybe let me know. I'm not going to test this just at the minute, because this thing is a bit of a pain for me to set up, to capture the video from it, and also to load software onto it. But nevertheless, a very generous donation. Thank you very much, Tyrell. I think I will just leave that connected to the back of the Spectrum here, and I'll have a play with this in my own time at some point in the near future. And then we've got this, a copy of Amos Professional for the Amiga, a basic inspired programming language. This was sent in by Keith from Yawning Angel Retro. He has a YouTube channel on which he does tutorials around Amos programming. Programming is something that I've been wanting to get back into for the longest time, and so I have started dabbling in Amos. I've been chatting to Keith about this over on our YouTubers Discord. And I'm not sure if maybe he was just sick of all the questions I was throwing at him, but he said, I'll send you a spare package here so that I'll have the manual. He did say the discs, they're bad, but that's fine. You can download the software online. The important bit of this is this little bit of light reading. I am only dabbling with it at the minute, but the intention will be to write a game of some shape, form or another. I'm currently working on a little bit of a side-scrolling shoot 'em up, although it is just at a very early stage, and I'm more just playing with that, just to try and get the grips with this language. So thank you very much for sending this in, Keith. It will be incredibly helpful, although I can't promise that there won't be more annoying questions in the near future. Now we're into the big boxes. This comes from Neil over at NLK Media. Neil also has a YouTube channel himself covering retro computer stuff, but he's maybe slightly better known for his CB radio stuff. He sent this all the way from Jersey. No, it's not a monitor. Rather, Neil recently picked up an auction lot of old Amigas, and so from that he has very kindly sent me a couple of machines. I genuinely have not opened this one yet. A lot of the smaller packages I had opened, you know, a lot of them just came in jiffy bags, and I'm ordering that many components and bits and pieces that also come in jiffy bags. Well, I sort of just open all of them just because in likelihood it's going to be something that I need there and then. This though, I knew exactly what it was, so this has just been put to the side. There is one machine, an A500 Plus. We'll take a closer look in a second. And then the other one, which I understand is just an A500, but a Rev 6. And so let's start with that Rev 6 because there's something loose inside here. And thankfully it just seems as though it's this. The trapdoor has maybe fell off during shipping. There is this rather mangled looking bit of plastic in there and a screw. So very much a well-loved Amiga. Someone has had stickers on it at some point. I'm sure we can clean all that off. The case has taken quite a bit of yellowing, so a bit of retro brightening might be called for. This lot must have came from Warrington and Northwich auctions. This is part of a lot. Powers on, does not read. Very common problem though. Might just be the disk drive needs a good clean. The disk drive might even just need its capacitors replaced. There is one very minor bit of damage here on the front of the case. I wouldn't be too worried about that though. And it has a memory expansion. That is the A501, I believe. Missing its bottom shield. And that's presumably because someone has been in here and cut the old battery out. You can see where that has leaked, but it hasn't wreaked too much mayhem. So we can just clean that wee bit up. We could probably even fit a new battery to get the real-time clock working again. Seems as though we're also missing the CPU door, but that's fine. I can either pick one of those up or even just 3D print something. Shall we take a quick look inside? And there is the Rev 6 motherboard. Perfectly clean board, no signs of any of that corrosion that was on the 501. No signs of that getting in here. Although I wouldn't have expected it, it wasn't that bad really, was it? Lots of dust though, that's easy to deal with. And this machine has the 1 megabyte Agnes, the 8372A. Space on the board here where you can add the other 512K of chip RAM, although that same thing is achieved just through the use of this. But what state is the 500 Plus in? Well, first impressions are quite good. Little bit of yellowing to the keyboard this time. The case itself doesn't really look to have yellowed, maybe ever so slightly, but definitely nothing worth worrying about. We have a sticker here saying it has an OK half meg expansion, but is there anything in here? Ah, there is. And oh dear, I can see corrosion. Yeah, the legs of this have gone a little bit anyway. But a very simple memory expansion, it wouldn't be hard to repair that. I am more concerned about what we'll find inside this case. And the board, well, yeah, it's not that bad. I have definitely seen an awful lot worse. The battery that was once here has very obviously spilled its guts, but it only seems to be affecting that sort of area there, and it has worked its way down onto that edge connector. A couple of those traces there do look quite bad, so no doubt some patchwork will be required, but I would be very confident that this one can be revived. Gary looks to have taken a little bit of corrosion. Yeah, he doesn't really want to come out of his socket. In fact, you know what? We'll just leave it. This will be a future refurb. There's a little screw. So we will come back to this at some point in the future to try and deal with that issue and try to get this working again. Probably better to look at this sooner rather than later. But for now, we'll just put it away. But I do think we could try to quickly power up this Amiga. And so, does it power up? Yes, it does, but it's trying to read something from the drive there. There's definitely no disc in it. What I suspect is happening is the switches inside the drive that detect if there's a disc inserted or not. Those have probably just got a bit dirty with age and they're giving it a false reading. But yeah, it has powered up fine. A little bit of a buzz out of the speakers there, so that might need some investigation. That certainly seems to be the grounds of a good working machine here. And thank you again very much, Neil, for the very generous donations. The last two parcels then, they both come from the same person, Darren Johnstone, who is one of my patrons. He actually sent me the big box first, although I'm not really sure how I'm going to film opening that because it is so big. This one he did send me second, but it's a bit more manageable on the bench here, so let's start with this one. Packing peanuts, my favourite. We have a large anti-static bag here with a PC card of some description in it and a user manual. A big binder which says Sinclair QL on it. That might give you a clue as to what's in the other box. The PCB though. Ooh, this is very nice. A single board computer, or SBC as it's sometimes shortened to. So very obviously a 486 SX. Large PC chips package there. Another PC chips package there, and then two Opti. There would be the BIOS and some RAM. IDE and floppy controller built in. We have parallel and serial on the bracket here. No video to talk of. Sometimes these things have video integrated into them. I'll have to try and dig out a manual for this because there are various pin headers about the place. We would need to try and figure out what all of it does. Reset there, for example. I think that says keyboard up in there. A couple of bent pins, but we can easily sort that. How much RAM does it have? I'm not really sure, to be honest. Nothing written on these is clearly giving it away. Even the part number on the chips themselves is a little bit cryptic. So no luck googling those numbers on the back of this, but googling the part number of the chips themselves, each of those seems to be a 1 meg by 4 bit chip. So if that's the case, those might actually be 2 meg sticks each. If each chip is 4 bit, well, you're going to need 2 of those. That'll give you 1 megabyte, then 2 megabytes. So yeah, potentially 8 megabytes total. Now, if I recall correctly, I think this single board computer, I think this maybe has a fault. But I suppose we'll not know until we test it properly. And to do that, I will need to get one of those ISA backplanes. Because, you know, this thing needs to be plugged into another board to derive its power. And obviously we're going to need a video card in there somewhere as well. But I think we've held off long enough. Let's get to the big box. This big box that is the same height as my desk. So let's see what treasures it contains. A power supply. A Sinclair power supply with a rather odd looking jack on it. Hey, we've got another single board computer. This one is definitely kitted out a bit more. We'll have a closer look at this in a minute. A box. Not sure what's in that. Another box. And we have some sort of card in here. Again, not just sure at this minute. Another box with lots more goodies again. something very, very cool in here. Look at that. A Sinclair QL. No doubt you guessed what was going to be in here, given the manual that you've seen coming out of the last box. But what an awesome, awesome machine. I cannot thank you enough, Darren. I am a little lost for words. But we're not done yet. There is another folder of sorts with more Sinclair QL documentation in it. And then last but not least, and I so hope this survived the shipping, we have a monitor, an Amstrad monitor. Although didn't Amstrad own Sinclair maybe by the time the QL came out? I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest. But let me get this tidied up a little bit, and then we'll take a closer look at everything on the bench. Now I know you want me to look at the QL, and I will. Yes, I'll get to that, but let's first have a look at the other bits and pieces that he sent in that box. So another single board computer, DX266 this time. Heatsink on the chip, so I'm not sure who the manufacturer is, but to be honest, on something like this, I would be surprised if it wasn't an Intel part. This one does seem a bit more complete though. It has this little breakout expansion bay thing with another serial and PS2 on it, which I'd have to assume is for a mouse. That is connected there. It doesn't really say what that's doing, but it's going to be either mouse or keyboard, isn't it? A full suite of RAM sticks this time. Just looking up the part number of each of those chips. Well, again, they are 4 megabit by 4. So 2 chips on each stick, 4 megabytes of RAM on each stick. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32 megs of RAM. Pretty well decked out for a 486 system. And then there is also this interesting looking card that's been added. If I had to guess, I would say this is a cache RAM card. The part number on each of those, well, it ends -15. So that would be quite fast RAM, 15 nanosecond. So let me Google the rest of that part number. And yeah, those are 32K 8-bit static RAM chips. So 32, 64, 128, 256K of cache. That would make sense for a DX266. As I understand, this one works fine. It's the other one which has a fault. But the two of these are more or less identical. Well, the actual PCBs in the background, they are identical. As I say though, I will have to get one of those ISA backplanes that I can plug this into to power it up, and also to add a VGA card. But with the two of these being the same, well, hopefully we can use the working one to troubleshoot the non-working one. In this box here then, we have this peculiar looking device sitting in a 3D printed enclosure. This says SD box on it. Comes apart easily enough. Has a little Arduino Nano in there. SD box for Amiga. Ah, I know what this is. So if I'm right, this plugs into the parallel port on the back of the Amiga. You can insert an SD card in there. You need to power it up separately. 5 volts would go through there. And then you can essentially mount an SD card within Workbench. This makes it a handy way of transferring software across. This will be incredibly useful. Thank you very much, Darren. Because up until now, moving files onto, say, my 1200 or the 500 that has the CF card in it, the only real way I've been able to do that is to pull the CF card out of those machines and mount that within UAE on my Windows computer. But if this works just as simply as I think it should, well, it'll just be a case of dropping files onto an SD card, sticking this into the back of the Amiga, and dragging and dropping files across as I need them. Just looking there, it must have got a bit of a knock. I think those LEDs are meant to line up with those two holes. sort of like that. But what else is in this box? A couple of cards by the looks of it. We have a Resound 2 OPL3. So an OPL3 sound card, OPL2 compatible, 8-bit ISA 2-channel sound card. Fantastic. I actually have an old PC that I will be looking to cover shortly. It only has 8-bit ISA slots in it, and I was wondering what sort of sound card I could possibly put into it. Well, this has suddenly just solved that problem. And then equally, this here might solve another problem for said machine. Blue Lava Systems, bootable 8-bit ISA IDE interface. Rear accessible CF card slot. Yeah, CF card would go in there. Oh, this is just fantastic. That is absolutely awesome. That solves two problems straight away that I have for that other machine that I want to build. Fantastic stuff. I'm genuinely a little lost for words here. But we pulled this box out as well, didn't we? So let's see what's in here. More cards. There's an ISA VGA card. The exact thing that we'd need to pair with one of those single board computers. Trident chipset. On either 1 or 2 megabytes of RAM here. The Sound Blaster Live 5.1. Okay, we'll not be able to pair that with those 46 single board computers. But a fantastic sound card from the late 90s. I actually had one of these back in the day. And I do want to rebuild my Windows 98 computer at some point. So you may be seeing this again at that stage. And then what is this? Oh, we'll come to this in a second. Because look what's in here. The very thing I need to test those single board computers. ISA backplane. Power would go in there. We can stick our single board computer in there, and then say our VGA card, that would go in there. I know this video is getting quite long as it is, but if we've got time, we'll maybe give that a quick test. This thing though, what is this? I have absolutely no idea. Just CPC 128K, Zaxxon, 8bitclone.com, Specky PL. So is this a modern clone of a CPC 128K? Would that be for connecting up a floppy drive? That would possibly be providing power to said floppy drive. Power input there, I would assume. A couple of 3.5mm jacks. PS2 port, possibly for a keyboard. Not really sure what that is. That's an 8-pin DIN. And then what looks like a serial port. 9-pin D-sub. This is fantastic, but I will have to do a little bit of homework because I'm not really sure what I'm looking at. If anyone knows, please let me know. And then there was this. One very well packed out little card. But what does this do? It's got a CPU on it. A Motorola 68020. 24 megahertz crystal on it. That is a 25 megahertz CPU. So is it running at 24? But what is this for? Super gold card and has a load of zip memory on it. Some more information here. Super gold card, 68020 CPU, RAM 4 megabyte. Floppy disk interface, version 4, Tetroid 2018. So okay, floppy disk drive, presumably connects there. Where does this go? Is this something to do with the QL, perhaps? Let's just bring in that machine for a closer look. And there it is, the Sinclair QL. What a fascinating machine. Clive Sinclair's entry into the business market. It never just really took off, did it? Very reminiscent of the Spectrum Plus. Certainly the keyboard is anyway, or the styling of it. Although this is definitely a bigger keyboard. And the spacing on those keys, anyone who watched the Spectrum Plus video will remember that I said everything felt a bit squished. This though does feel a lot more natural to type on. But it does look like it needs a little bit of work. It is a little bit dirty. That's nothing we can't deal with easily enough. But looking in here on the micro drives, in that first one, there's like a wire or something there blocking the first drive. So that will require some further investigation. What is going on with that? And just while I have this in the air a bit, I can see a speaker in there. So does the QL have an internal speaker like the ZX Spectrum? I would have expected this to output sound over perhaps its RGB port, but maybe not. Lots going on the back here. Two jacks there that, well, initially they look like 3.5mm jacks, but that says net. Power input there, the RGB obviously. UHF, that will be our RF video. Two serial ports and two ports labeled CTL. Controllers maybe? Would that be for joysticks? And those look like phone jacks. So we'll need to have a think about how to hook something up to that. I wonder, could I maybe come up with something here to either replace those with DB9 ports or make some sort of breakout cable to just go to a DB9 port so I could plug in, say, a normal joystick. I'll have to check out the pin out of that to see if an Atari standard joystick would be pin compatible. A ROM socket here. Yeah, space in there to insert a cartridge of some form. Looks like there's maybe something here that comes off. Although I can't quite get it there and I don't really want to force it. And then there is another expansion there on that side, an edge connector. Not really sure what that's for. I suppose I could go and read the manual, but I also don't want to do too much to this machine at the minute because it will be getting its own dedicated video. I do think we could take a quick look inside though. Hey, look at that. The keyboard is not connected. And look at the state of that edge connector. So that is going to need a bit of work. Yeah, both of those are completely mangled. And that wire that was hanging across the front of the micro drive, that was presumably one of these, which is going to the access lights for the micro drives themselves. But I have spotted something that looks familiar, and that more or less confirms that our accelerator is indeed for the QL. That side door comes off into the machine. I was trying to pull it out previously and it was getting caught, but pushing it in and it comes out easily enough. That will go in there then. Presumably giving the QL a nice little speed boost. As I said, this card has the 68020 on it. Well, it is the EC variant of the chip, much the same that you'd find in the Amiga 1200. And while the QL itself does have a Motorola 68000 CPU, well, a 68000 CPU of sorts, make no mistake, this is very much an 8-bit computer. Because if you look at the part number on this lovely ceramic processor here, well, it is an MC68008. Well, that tells us that this 68000 just has an 8-bit data bus on it, unlike the standard 68000, which is 16-bit externally. And in fact, that chip is quite a bit smaller than the standard one. But as I understand, it is still 32-bit internal. Still uses the same 68000 instructions, I believe. It's just to the outside world, this chip is only 8-bit. 128K of RAM, presumably a couple of ROMs in here, probably a ULA somewhere. Looks like there's one chip missing there. Although, is that maybe meant to be missing? I'm not sure. So I don't think there's any point in trying to power this machine up today. I think all I'll do is reassemble it here. I do need to go and do a little bit of homework on this, and then it will be getting its own dedicated video. So I was just about to say, let's finish up with a quick test of those single board computers. And I was thinking how to lay this out. Obviously I need to raise this up a bit because of the bracket on the single board computer. And so I thought, I could maybe balance this on top of the power supply, but I need to put something in here to protect the bottom of that. And then I noticed this big bit of cardboard, that would be absolutely perfect for that. This was included in that box. I just thought it was a bit of packaging material, but then noticed that it says, please do not bend. And it was sealed. Well, that's because in here we have one brand new keyboard ribbon for the QL. So thank you so much, Darren. You really have thought of everything here. And so yeah, that QL will absolutely be the subject of its own video shortly. But we'll just put that back in there to keep it nice and safe. And I suppose that will still work perfectly fine as a means to balance this board on. So CPU card in there, just using the VGA card that Darren sent, the Trident card. We've got it hooked up here, going to the capture device. But does it work? Well, it's powered on. I can see post codes being displayed here, but nothing on the screen. Now there's no PC speaker hooked up here. In fact, I'm not even sure where a PC speaker would be hooked up. But going by the post codes, it looks like it is stuck on a number 6. Although our post code's not normally double digits. How about we try the other card? Let's try this one. Although I'm pretty sure it was this one that Darren said wasn't working. But let's just see what it does. Yeah, this one is stuck on a postcode 52. And again, no picture on the screen. So it seems as though we have a bit more investigation to do for both of these. And again, that will be subject of a future video. Well, there we are. Some fabulous donations from some incredibly generous people. In fact, that's not right. It's not some fabulous donations. They are all fabulous donations. I am so incredibly grateful to receive all of this. It genuinely has me a little bit lost for words. In fact, if I'm going to be totally truthful with you, this might be the 7th time I'm trying to record this outro because I am just struggling with what to say. Thank you would be the obvious thing, but somehow I feel that thank you doesn't quite cover it. So about the only thing that I can promise to do is to try and make videos on all of this stuff. I just try to make the videos that I enjoy watching. I hope that you guys enjoy watching it too. And so yeah, there's plenty here to keep me going for the foreseeable future. In fact, on top of this is maybe another 20 or so projects that I have to get to at some point. So when I do say there's plenty more yet to come here on CRG, I'm not joking. Hopefully we've got enough projects for the next 10,000 subscribers. Although I'm not getting ahead of myself. In terms of what we do have here, and just to try and wrap it up a bit, I've tested the CRT. Unfortunately, there does seem to be a problem with that. The vertical on it is rolling. I don't really know that much about CRTs, but I do know a couple of guys who know their way around these things pretty well. So I'll have to pick the brains of them. Then hopefully we can come to this, get it sorted, and have one working Amstrad monitor. In terms of the QL itself, yeah, it's probably just as well we didn't try to power it up because the power supply for it, well, it's sort of falling apart. And going back over the conversations I had with Darren back when he was offering to send this to me, well, he thinks that there may well be a fault in this PSU. So this will need some investigation before we do try to power up the QL, because I definitely don't want to risk any damage to that machine. As for the two 486 cards, well, this one sort of stopped on a postcode 6. Not really sure what's going on there. But while editing that bit, I did go through the video frame by frame, and I can see the last postcode before that is 58. That may be related to the cache. So possibly a cache RAM error. That's something we can test in the future. You know, we just remove that board and try it again. But as I say, I didn't want to do too much testing in this video because there will be dedicated videos about this, about all of this at some point in the future. The other 486 card, the postcode that it stopped on, well, that seems to be related to memory. So whether it's just bad RAM sticks or maybe a resistor network or a bit of logic or something that's sitting in the path of the RAM, maybe something on there that has failed and causing that other card not to boot as well. But as I say, we will get to that in the future, along with all the rest of this. I do feel like I'm rambling now a little bit, so I just want to close off by saying again thank you to everyone who donated. For this video only, I do want to mention my Patreon, and only because I want to say a massive thank you to all of those guys for their support. I have had the Patreon for a little over a year now, although I never mention it in the videos. It is linked in the video's description. So if you do want to consider supporting what I do here, well, feel free to check that out. Although, as I say, the only reason that I am mentioning it this time is just to say thank you to those folk who do support me over there. You do make everything here possible. That little bit of support just allows me to purchase the components and bits and pieces that we need for the various projects. And then beyond that, it's just a thank you to all the rest of you. 10,000 subscribers. I genuinely never thought I would have got there. But here we are. Onwards and upwards, as they say. Here's to the next 10,000. Sure, why don't we just try and add a 0 onto the number and get ourselves a YouTube plaque? That would be fantastic. That would be the dream. But that is getting slightly ahead of myself. For this year, I do want to try and set a target of 15,000. Although, to be honest, I think that might be a bit of a stretch. But sure, all I can do is keep trying to make the videos. Hopefully you guys keep enjoying them. If there is anything here that you would like to see in any particular order, maybe let me know. As I said, I am definitely rambling now, so let's close it off. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.